So the first question I have for you is for everyone that's watching or listening to this, myself included, we are all, I am sure, spending time on things that are not the best use of our. You are a bit of an expert in productivity. And I think also in terms of focusing on using your time in smart ways. So what I want to do is I want to try to help them. And by them, I mean me as well, identify and remove some of the things that we're spending time on right now that probably aren't the best use of our time. So I thought one of the ways to do this is give me a few quick questions that we can ask ourselves or exercises that we can do to improve our productivity in the next month. And maybe as a starting point, feel free to give me a little take on your view of productivity in general. That should be easy, right? Just in a few minutes, help us solve everything. So
did the 10-minute timer start yet, or does it start now? We have an 8-week course on this.
All right.
I'll start with a very simple proposition that people often get wrong is not all tasks are created equally, right? I can send an email to a friend with a dinner recommendation, and I can send an email to a journalist at the Wall Street Journal. They both take 10 minutes. Just because something takes the same amount of time doesn't mean it has the same amount of impact. That's the first thing. Second thing is to always look for that scale, that impact of your action. What really moves the needle? And for that, I'm sure we'll get into it. We have the framework of 10K work, which basically says $10 work is low skill, low leverage activities, responding to emails, updating your website, making graphics in Canva. And 10K work is high skill, high leverage, coming up with brand frameworks, reaching out to journalists, creating catchy taglines, SEO, right? Things that really scale your impact. And between those quadrants, leverage, impact is the big determinant. So I'll start you off with a simple question. If you could only work, you're actually in that phase, new dad, lack of sleep, schedule thrown awry. If you could only work 2 hours today, what would you work on?
It's funny. It's not that much of a hypothetical. Recording this podcast would definitely be one. I can tell you that it's funny. Like I would say replying to some emails, but I would not say replying to every email. To your point, there's a big difference between replying to the new newsletter subscriber who just sent me a random question and the person who reached out and wants to talk about hiring me.
Exactly.
So when I say replying to emails with limited time, it'd be starting with those sort of higher priority emails, not the others. And then I think, look, there's a list of stuff that I know is high impact, but have avoided, right? Sponsors for this podcast. I've done almost 20 episodes of this show. And from day one, I'm like, I want to bring on sponsors for the show. I have started to have some of those conversations. I just haven't done it. And in the meantime, I keep producing podcast episodes that could be monetized and are not because I'm not doing it. Yeah.
And you nailed it. And what you're getting to is sponsorship is a high scale strategy, right? The volume, basically it's not free money, but it's like an Airbnb an apartment that goes unused, right? Could Airbnb it? There's latent economics, but you're not doing it. That's a very high leverage thing. You already created the thing, and something above it, some additional above strategy would unlock additional value without needing you to create new things. So that is an example of that high skill, high leverage. And one thing you would want to ask yourself is, what's the blocker? See, because what happens is with these things, they're like, you might have a little imposter syndrome. I'm putting words in your mouth. You might have a little imposter syndrome. You might not know exactly how to ask for a sponsor, because that might be like a new thing for you, podcast sponsorships. So what happens, this is 10K work. It's much easier to drop back and be like, you know what? That thing is like making me a little uncomfortable. I'm going to get to inbox zero. Because when I get to inbox zero, I feel really good in that moment. And I feel like I got a lot done, right? And that's $10 work. And so we want to we all have to respond to emails, right? Even Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, they have to respond to emails. But we want to get into like, how can Musk run 5 companies? He has to think of the highest leverage thing he can do, which is usually probably leverage and hiring and strategy, right?
Yeah.
Hiring and strategy are 2 very high leverage activities, but you can't do 100% of strategy or else you'd never execute. It's kind of always finding that balance and really understanding those blockers. I think there's a lot of psychological blockers. $10 work, you do it because you're tired. You do it because you're a perfectionist. You do it because you're scared of failure. You do it because you have imposter syndrome. You do it because you're distracted. Feels good to reply to YouTube comments, to reply to news. It feels like you're pushing the ball forward. You have guilt. 10K work. Ooh, this thing feels a little weird. Like sponsorships, I've never done this before. I've got to send cold emails. I don't really know exactly the right phrasing. I don't know the right pricing. And then I don't know if it's going to work. And I might look a little foolish because I might ask for too much. Or if I ask for too little, I'm going to be self-loathing myself. Yeah, I was just going to go back to Canva as my safe space.
And it's and I would add to that also, in using myself in this as an example, is doing it's going to create additional work. And I got to figure out how to place the ads in the thing, and I got to coordinate and get the stuff. So you're right. There can be the fear of doing it for whatever reason, as you call them, blockers. But then there's also if I succeed, if I get a sponsor, now I got to do a bunch of other stuff that I'm on the hook for that I think also prevents it. I'm curious. And again, you can use mine as an example, but also just in general, because I do think this is really common, right? That people have those blockers I guess there's two different things. One is they're not sure what they should do at the higher leverage activity.
Yep.
But for the people that are like, I know my time is better spent doing that for whatever blockers I have, I'm not doing it. How do you recommend, or what can you recommend to help them get over that hump and overcome those blocks?
So first example, super cheeky, but for those of you who followed my blog for a while, I think that the how and the why, so the personal psychological traits and the activity are intricately related. So I would say, if you have imposter syndrome, it probably comes from some fear that you have in you that you've not fully come to grips with or addressed. Well, let's put that one aside because that's really not why your listeners came to this episode. Another way would be to start very small. People do 25 minutes of 10K work every day. And you said, like a lot of people, that can be sitting with a blank notebook and asking, what is the highest leverage thing I can be doing right now? It sounds crazy, but we don't ever make time to think, right?
Yeah.
We're always creating, we're always updating, we're always tweaking and tinkering. Where's the thinking time? Just because we are creative entrepreneurs doesn't mean that we don't need to think and strategize and set a vision and set longer term goals and so on and so forth. So start small, 25 minutes, let's start even really small, 25 minutes a week.
Yeah.
Thinking time. I find that I teach the damn thing and I find that hard to create that, but I get about 25 minutes a day of thinking time. So that'd be one way. The second way would be to identify next actions, right? And that's a kind of David Allen getting things done concept. Is people have these like elaborate product lists. You even mentioned it yourself. If I were to win the sponsorship, it unfurls this whole new realm of activities. Start small. What's the next action? Next action, create a sponsor template in Notion, sponsor script, whatever, and start there, right? Next actions move you towards completion of projects. Third way, think about your time, think about your energy, not your time. All these $10 tasks, handle comments, responding to reader questions, batch those. Think about your week. When are you lowest energy? For me, it's Thursday and Friday afternoons, super low energy. I just throw in the towel. I wave the white flag. I'm like, there is no 10K work happening Thursday afternoon. Right. But I will get 100 low value tasks done while listening to music. Sometimes I even have a cocktail in my hand, and you batch them so that we have to do it. Please don't take away from this that you shouldn't do low value work. We all have to do low value work, but you want to minimize the low value work and you don't want it to distract from the high value work. And you can do that by thinking about your energy texture.
Yeah, that's great. One other thing I would add that I've done, and again, it depends what you're trying to do, but one thing that has worked for me is I have these skill session products and I have a bunch of products that I've created that you launch them, you promote them, they're always available, right? Sort of evergreen products. And there's that thing in the back of my head of, I should promote these more, even in like a basic, simple way, right? You can argue, is that promotion of that low value, high? It's actually pretty high value, high leverage. It's certainly, the potential is a tweet promoting a paid product has the potential to get me more than just another sort of random tweet, right? So one of the things that I did, and it was so obvious, and this goes to your point of take some time to think, right? It was so obvious in retrospect, is I set an autoresponder email. So now when someone subscribes to my newsletter, 30 days after they've subscribed, they get an email that says, my 1-month anniversary gift to you. And they get this email and it basically says, hey, if you want a discount on any of these products, let me know. Appreciate you being here for a month. And so that runs automatically. And now it's driving sales automatically. The 10 minutes maybe that it took me to create that email now ensures that everybody that comes into my newsletter after 30 days is going to at least be aware that promotion is now on autopilot. And again, all it took was coming up with the idea in 10 minutes to set it up.
So 5 minutes of thinking,
Yep.
10 minutes of execution. And then this flywheel, probably not a massive source of revenue, but this little flywheel of extra income.
Yeah. And it trickles in. And I think the other thing it does for me is it removes that feeling in the back of my mind of I'm not promoting enough. At least I'm doing something.
I love
Maybe
that.
I should still do more, but there's something at all times every day. Someone's getting an email promoting my services to.
And I love it. You gave the perfect example of a 10K flywheel, right? Just like a little bit of strategic thinking paired with execution, paired with a unique skill or unique asset that you have, right? Readers. And you package those together and the thing works while you sleep.
Yeah. Cool.